Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I always talk about four different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always looking for others, influencers, creators, changing the world on the cutting edge, getting those conversations and sharing them with the world. So today I have a very esteemed and accomplished guest, Bret Ridgway. He's going to talk to us all about building a brand as a influencer and creator. So we're going to talk about books, informational products, speaking, as well as doing your own events. And he's the master of this. So it's going to be a great conversation. So Bret, welcome.
Dr. Lewis, my pleasure to be with you this morning, sir.
Yeah, and we connected through Podmatch, and it's great. I'm always happy with the quality of guests. And tell us more about yourself, your background, upbringing, and how you got started.
Sure. So I trace what I'm doing today back to very specific things, but way back in like mid 1990s, 1995, actually, I think it was, I put up the first portal website in the plant engineering and maintenance industry. So I created a product for the company I was working for on rolling bearings. So the niche was industrial maintenance people. And I knew one product wouldn't a company make, so I made deals with McGraw-Hill and various other technical publishers and decided that we would market all these products via a website. So I put up the website called maintenanceresources.com back in 1995. Not around any longer, but back in those days, we were selling VHS tapes and books aimed at that particular niche. And during about the same time frame, I actually had a joint venture with a guy where I took on his hard to find marketing books catalog and put that online. But because of that relationship, when this person decided he was going to do his first internet marketing super conference back in 1999, he actually called me up and asked me if I had to handle the backroom sales table for him. Well, honestly, doctor, I didn't even know what backroom sales meant at that time, but I hadn't been to Las Vegas before, so it sounded good to me. So I went out and agreed to do that. And that is where I start to get to know some of the speakers in the internet and information marketing spaces. And that led to a side business actually where I would provide the crew and in most cases, more importantly, actually the merchant account that could handle a large sum of money in a short period of time across multiple speakers. So a lot of speakers are promoters in their own right. So we were doing that for more and more and more people. So over the course of like a 12 to 15 year period, I probably handled the back room about 150 events. Saw a couple thousand different speakers in person. And when they found out, actually back in about 2002 or three, I think it was, one of them cornered me at an event because he found out I was doing product fulfillment for my own websites and asked me if I would take on some product fulfillment for him. And I'd been thinking about it for a while because it was a natural outgrowth of all the people I had gotten to know in the industry. And so with another guy, I put together a company called Speaker Fulfillment Services back in 2003. And Speaker Fulfillment Services is still around. Now, I'm not actively doing anything with them these days, but they provide product fulfillment services for speakers, authors, and information marketers. So it got to be where I was doing more and more fulfillment. And because I was doing the backroom sales table at all these events, I got to see what speakers do well, what they don't do so well. And that all led to a series of books. The first book I actually wrote was back in 2007, I think it was, called View from the Back, and it was a tips for event promoters who want to dramatically increase their back of the room sales. Then I wrote a book about the 50 biggest mistakes I see information marketers make, and that eventually led to a book called Mistakes Authors Make, and one called ABCs of Speaking. And I have a new one coming out sometime in 2023 called How to Build a Profitable Speaking Business. So my entire niche, so to speak, is the author, speaker, info marketer, expert space, and focusing most of my efforts these days, honestly, on helping people who want to launch speaking as a second career. They've had business success, but they want to do speaking, learn how the industry really works and the things that they need to do and not do, et cetera. So, that's kind of my journey and where I got to where we're at today.
Interesting. Very fascinating because I remember I sent my first email 96. That's when the internet was just, and then I remember, and I remember high school, we were on bulletin boards and, there was like Fortran and all this like C and all that stuff.
I still remember using a telex machine.
Yeah. But it's interesting. We'll talk about, the trends you're seeing, everything's being on, streaming. But in your opinion, what's, I have a lot of we have a lot of clients interested in becoming entrepreneurs and thought leaders. What's the best way? Author, speaking, memberships, there's so much stuff. What would you recommend?
Yeah, as I say, you got to pick and choose your battles, Doc, obviously. But getting a book written is an excellent first start because you can leverage that in so many different ways. Now, when you're getting into the industry, yes, you should have a book, but you need to realize that a book should be a front end product, and the real money's in the back end, higher ticket products and services you can offer those people. So, I mean, very few people make a ton of money selling their book, honestly. I mean, the average author, I think I heard, sells 250 copies of their book. So, friends and family, and that's about as far as it goes. But the book needs to be a lead generation product for you. And you've got to have those higher end products and services in place when you come out with that book. So, there's groundwork that definitely needs to be done. But a book is an excellent place to start, and it's a matter of figuring out what your message to share is and what is that going to lead people to. I mean, I actually have a longtime client, doctor, who's, I don't know if you know this name or not, but Dr. Keith Scott Munby. He's an alternative health doctor, and he's written about 15 to 20 different books on various aspects of health. And he actually sells a lot of books. I mean, our fulfillment company shipped thousands and thousands of books for him, and he did most of his marketing via being on podcasts and radio shows and all that. And so he would drive people to his website from those particular shows and sell whatever the book was that he was featured in that particular episode. So, I mean, he's made some decent money on books, certainly, but I think he's more the exception than the rule in terms of monetizing your expertise through various channels. Yeah, books can be a part of it, but it's not where the real money is going to be made.
Yeah. How does it fit in with digital products and courses? Tell us more.
Well, it's certainly, people will say, you still ship books, the fulfillment company? And the answer is yes, of course you do, because there's so many people that would rather curl up on the couch or, and read a book, and they don't want to do it on time. I mean, I don't do Kindle. I mean, I'd be honest. I'm not, if I have something that I download a PDF, I'm going to print it out to read it. I'm not going to read it online because if something's digital only, it's so easily out of sight, out of mind. Mm-hmm. And I mean, how many things have you downloaded, Doc, that you never looked at again because they got lost on your computer and they're in the vapor, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a place for physical books, and the fulfillment company still ships thousands of books per week. Now, it's one of those things where I always tell people that avoid the digital only pawn because it's a dangerous game to play. Mm-hmm. Had a client a few years ago who had a product that was like a $497 product. Very, very well-known marketing person in the internet space. And they decided they would convert that product to a digital-only product and did so. Well, fortunately, this marketer was smart because they did still offer the option of getting the physical version still if you wanted. And they priced that physical version at $200 more than the physical version. So instead of $497, that was $697. And this person told me that 80% of their customers were willing to pay the extra $200 to get the physical version versus doing a digital download only.
Interesting.
Another well-known marketer had a newsletter listed with thousands and thousands of people. I mean, maybe even a couple 100,000. I don't know the exact number, honestly. But they decided that they would convert that physical version to a digital version because, hey, it doesn't cost anything to deliver a digital newsletter. Mm-hmm. Well, it started happening right away. Unsubscribe. I mean, they lost thousands and thousands and thousands of subscribers because people still wanted that tangible thing, that physical newsletter they could hold in their hands and open up and look at. So, yes, you need to have digital products, certainly, mm-hmm. and you ought to offer people both versions, but going digital only, in my opinion, is a very dangerous game to play.
Interesting. What about consumption habits? Because some people prefer audio and video.
Well, yeah, you need to certainly address different modalities when you're thinking about how you're going to share your expertise. And as you know, some people are watchers, some people are listeners, some people are readers. I mean, it's a matter of having a mix of different modalities that you cover in your various products so that they can consume it in the method that they wish to consume it. I mean, product consumption, honestly, is what any information product is all about.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, let's talk about books, for example. Well, love to go into a bookstore and go like to the marketing book section. And if I pick up a book, it looks interesting, I'll start to page through the first chapter. And if I see that first chapter is 25 or 30 pages, it's like, oh my God, this is too much work to even read one chapter. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to buy this book because it looks too hard to consume. So I honestly think if you do a book, you should have very short chapters. I mean, the master of this is the fiction author James Patterson. I don't know if you ever read Patterson, but I mean, his chapters are 2 or 3 pages long. So it's like, well, yeah, I can read another chapter. I can read another chapter. I can read another chapter. Next thing you know, if you read that 30 or 50 or 100 pages because you're consuming them in real bite-sized chunks. So think about the consumption of your book when you're putting it together. It has a big impact. Even things like the length of your paragraphs, the size of your font, what are you putting anything in that book to kind of give the eye a break, whether it's call outs, pictures, graphs, whatever it may be. I mean, consumption is the name of the game for a book, because if you can't get them to read your book, the chances of them coming back to you for other products and services that you may have goes way, way down. So make it as easy as possible for somebody to consume the information that you have. Same thing applies to audio and video products. Yes, people still buy CDs and DVDs, believe it or not. Now, the fulfillment company doesn't produce nearly as many of those as they used to, but there are some months still where in the fitness niche, thousands and thousands of DVDs are shipped out because, think about it, people that want to work out like to pop that DVD into the player and watch it on their big speed TV to work out in the living room and not sit at their desk and watch it on a computer. So DVDs still fit that market very well. But if you're doing a DVD, I think, typically we would advise people not to put more than 2 hours of content on a DVD, and make sure you have menus and break it into chapters in some way so that people can pick up where they left off, so to speak. Nobody wants to have to start at the beginning of a DVD again to watch where they were. Same thing on a CD. I mean, typically we would advise clients to keep it to about 70 minutes maximum on a CD, because that's roughly the capacity. And again, think about how you might break it into sections or chapters, whether it could be in time increments or based on topic or whatever. But if somebody doesn't have the opportunity to listen to all 70 minutes at one time, make it easy for them to go back and pick up where they left off so that they can consume that content.
Interesting. Very fascinating. Sounds like you have to be on different, it's like you're increasing your distribution channels.
I mean, in essence, you are. I mean, think about it. If you're selling a book, you have to be on Amazon, because that's the 800-pound gorilla. That's where people go typically to look for books. Excuse me. But if you are a person who's developed any kind of platform at all, you're speaking on a podcast, or you're speaking on a virtual summit, or you're on a live event stage or whatever, and you're promoting a book, then you're crazy if you drive them to Amazon to buy your book. Because number one, Amazon, it's their customer, not your customer. They don't pick up the phone and say, hey, Brett, Frankie Frisch bought your book on such and such. Here's his contact information. Have at it, or whatever. So if you have the ability to control the traffic, drive them to your own website to buy that book or product versus sending them to Amazon or somewhere else to do that. I mean, there may be things you want to do to incentivize them to buy it from you. Maybe it's an author signed copy. Maybe it's an additional bonus. But other disadvantages of selling only via Amazon are it's their customer. You don't have the ability to include any type of insert or anything else in your package that you're shipping out. So if you have a sales flyer or even a bookmark or postcard or a thank you note or whatever, if you're doing your own fulfillment or using a fulfillment company, you can stick those extra pieces in that can help further your cause, so to speak. Amazon, they're going to ship the item, and that's it. So you don't get the customer, and you don't really get the ability to market that customer other products and services. Now, yes, you're going to sell books on Amazon, certainly, and that's why it's important that you have in that book what we call bounce backs. If you got to drive them from that book to your website to get them to opt in, whether it's a bonus video, audio, PDF report, whatever it may be. I mean, you figure out what's going to work in your particular area of expertise. but you got to drive them away from that book, get them on your list of it, and you can do the back end marketing to them.
Oh, fascinating. Very, yeah, very insightful. I never thought about that because, when I'm speaking on stage, I just refer them to Amazon. But, what you're saying is actually more powerful because you actually you're saying what you're controlling the traffic. And the next question is a lot of clients and people listening to this, they want to be speakers. What is the best way? Is it, podcast, webinar, virtual? Is it live? Tell us more. How can they create a living out of this?
All are great. Certainly, virtual events is a much bigger player in the whole game of the speaking industry than it was pre-COVID. But live events are starting to come back, and there are certain people that prefer live events because you get much better interaction and networking and all that live than via a summit.
Yeah.
But the speaking industry is a fascinating one, and as I said earlier, I've heard a couple thousand speakers over my time in person, and there's some things they do well, some things they don't do well. But I mean, first you need to define what area of expertise you want to speak about, and you should have more than one talk, honestly, because there are certain things where a particular topic is going to fit better to a given audience than maybe another topic that you can cover. But the speaking industry, there's two major types of speakers. One is what I call the fee speaker, and that's the keynote speaker who's paid a fee to come in and deliver their content, whether it's for a corporation or an association or whatever. There's also the platform seller speaker who typically comes and speaks for free, pays their own cost to get to an event or whatever, and then they're going to make their money selling in the back of the room whatever products or services that they have. And honestly, that shouldn't be a book because typically event promoters want you to have a higher priced item to sell, whether it's a coaching program, a membership site, whatever, because in the typical multiple speaker event scenario, it's a 50-50 split between the speaker and the event promoter on those back of the room sales. So they don't want you coming in with a $15 book to sell because there's really no money in it for that, for them in that scenario. So they want a higher ticket item, and those ticket prices have fluctuated over the years, obviously. I've seen people sell $25,000 programs. I've seen people sell $1,000 programs. For a while there, the price points went down because back in 2008-9, when the downturn and just people weren't willing to spend the money. But the typical price point is typically about $2,000 these days on higher ticket items at events. You do see some $1,000 ones and all that, but if you're really going to make any money as a speaker selling products on the stage, you need to have a high converting offer, and it needs to be at a higher ticket price because you are giving up a portion of that pie to the event promoter whose stages you're going to be on.
Interesting. For example, how do people get started as a public speaker? A lot of people, they already have their brand and their courses and all of that, but they want to be speaking.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I think is out of the gate, you need to pretty much accept almost any speaking opportunity to get practice. I mean, but once you've honed the craft, then you got to start picking and choosing your battles, so to speak. So, I mean, speak for a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis or a, Optimist Club or whatever, so that you can get more comfortable delivering your content. I think virtual summits are great, and services such as getting on as many podcasts where you're a proper fit for their audience is great. I'm actually starting a podcast myself after the first of the year called Spotlight on Speaking. And it's so fascinating, Dr. As talking to so many different people and getting their point of view and their history and all that stuff. But as a new speaker, get on services like Podmatch. It's pretty darn inexpensive. I mean, if you're just want to guess, it's like $23 a month at the basic level. You enter your keywords that are appropriate for what you would want to talk about, and it'll match you up with appropriate podcast hosts that serve that same niche. And you just start reaching out to them and getting there, and just more and more practice, getting more and more comfortable. And, if you're delivering quality content, yes, you have to be the first one spreading the word, so to speak. But, these podcast hosts and summit hosts and event promoters and all that, while it's a big industry, it's also a small industry. I mean, they talk together. They know who's good. They know who delivers value and all that. And, I mean, there are certain things that you don't want to do as a speaker, but, getting known for delivering quality content is the first thing that should be on your list.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, every time I'm on speaking stages, I'm always just trying to deliver as much value as possible. What's for the audience, give them their money's worth. And then, whatever happens, that's karma. So, what is very, I love this information influencer marketing, whatever you call it. It's just so, the possibilities are endless. How do people contact you, follow you, visit your website, etc.?
Sure. The primary website is bretridgway.com, and that's Brett with one T and Ridgway with no E. But also, if you think you have something to share that would be appropriate for the Spotlight on Speaking show, then hop on over to spotlightonspeaking.com and let me know your interest. And then if you have, how do I say this? If you're interested in the whole speaking industry, my new book coming out next year is How to Build a Profitable Speaking Business. And if you go to buildaprofitableSpeakingBusiness.com, let me know your interest, so I'll let you know when the book actually comes out. It's being published by Morgan James, and I'm going to guess we're looking at maybe June, but I'm certainly hoping to push that up as much as possible.
And for all the audience out there listening, Brett's resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check out his books via his website. It's posted to Amazon, and be sure to follow him on social media. Thanks so much for information packed podcast, and thanks for coming on to the show.
My pleasure, Doctor. Thank you so much.